Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
Without nitrogen, he's just like you and me, only purple.
Jackson frantically spun in circles and then screamed.
Charlie!
You trust me, JT?
Of course I do, with my life.
I'll group you out, you get fly, understand? If Cidney goes down, you failsafe him back. I will kill you if you don't. I need these words echoing in your skull. If you don't failsafe Cidney today, I won't rest until you're dead.
Charlie, I've never heard you talk to him like that.
I've never heard anyone talk to him like that.
I love you, Big Purple.
And I love you both.
And the battle paused as we hovered, 40 feet in the air.
I got fly.
I got Foon.
Ah, there it is.
Oh, God.
Howie, no. Howie, please, no.
Then suddenly Jackson plummeted from view. Prophit's hand shot into his jacket pocket. He disabled the wireless connection to her brain.
He was right. You know, I didn't call this meeting to say any of that stuff. I really just wanted to talk to you, Cidney.
These are the Beam Chronicles, with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 2, Compromise. Chapter 16, Cidney Kovorski.
You realize there is no nitrogen in this room.
I knew it was true, but could not help glancing at the window through which Jackson had been flung only seconds ago. The window is open.
It is. But you realize there is still no nitrogen, right? You have methods of detecting that.
Yes, but even without my enhanced strength, I could probably overpower you. I added this without much thinking and instantly regretted it. Luckily, he just chuckled dismissively, staring out the window with one hand stuffed into his pocket, the other holding his whiskey.
Probably could. Beyond the fact that I just defenestrated a telekinetic and there was nothing he could do about it, and that's why you haven't attacked me yet. You know you wouldn't win. You know I'm too famously well prepared to leave it to a wrestling match with a guy 6 times my size, so you're waiting to see what I do first. See, that's what I like about you, Cidney. You're always so logical and careful. Jackson's too emotional. He thinks he can prod a bear because he's wearing a bike helmet, and Charlie, well... Today, Charlie's judgment was clouded by some powerful motivators. Can't really hold that against her intelligence, can we? But you're unclouded. You're stoic and phlegmatic. Smart, poised, careful. That's what I admire about you most of all.
I ignored his compliments, focusing on convincing him to failsafe Jackson before I did anything else. Howie, Charlie will never fight for you. I will never fight for you again if Jackson is dead. You can torture us and kill us, but you will lose all of Ava in one fell swoop if you do not failsafe him back.
Oh, he's not dead.
He cavalierly informed me as Jackson's limp body flung back through the window, unconsciously flopping onto the ground beside Charlie. Howie used whatever power it was that granted him the ability to move him to align their bodies, spinning away from his window to examine them.
They would have beautiful children. Don't you think, Sid? Come over here, take a look. Tell me I'm wrong. Just the most beautiful children. Unfortunately, they won't get her eyes. Statistically speaking, blue is recessive, but still, even so, I wonder if they ever considered it, having children, that is. I wonder if they thought about whether or not I'd allow them to.
I did not respond as he stroked his goatee in deep contemplation. He had driven our team to the gates of hell and inexplicably parked the car. I would let him blabber on about any topic if it meant there was an outside chance that this day could end with me carrying them back to my apartment, resetting our status quo.
I've thought about it, you know, if I'd let them have kids. I've thought about it several times, and I think the conclusion I've come to is, yes, I would allow it, sure. There's a risk. Their son would be the most powerful anomaly in the world, stronger than even me, but Only explicitly because the kids would be so beautiful, I'd let them risk it, you know?
I nodded somberly, tried to stop my knees from quivering, betraying my secret internal fear.
Who am I kidding, though?
He paced around them to the other side of their bodies next to me.
Jackson's a good enough looking guy, but Charlie's the real winner in that gene pool. Why, I'd wager any father would have a beautiful child with Charlie as the mother. She's just that breathtaking, don't you agree?
The question repulsed me. I hated reducing Charlie's value to the fact that she was attractive. There was so much more to Charlie's genes than that. And it was hard to objectively pass judgment on her looks when she lay comatose on the floor, fear and anguish trapped in her icy blue eyes. I knew she was miles deep in a pit darker than the blackest night, where time itself stretched thin. I was her only hope and needed to make haste getting her out, but if that involved playing Prophit's idiotic games, I at least already knew she was pretty. Hers is a stunning beauty, but I do not really think of her that way.
No, of course not. I don't either, obviously. For different reasons, I'm sure, but perhaps not.
He patted me on the shoulder, and I tried my damnedest to follow his train of thought, decipher his different reasons. Perhaps he had only made such comments to confuse and stagger me, permit him control over the conversation. I would have relented it to him regardless.
No, he's not good enough for her, but I guess I'd never think anyone was good enough for Charlie. Jackson's about as close as I'd wager we could get, especially considering the most important part. She's obviously crazy about him, right?
Indeed. I gulped, wiping sweat away from my face, diligently trying to press through this talk so that Charlie could be turned back on and Jackson could be resuscitated.
Did you hear the way she screamed when she thought I'd killed him?
And then I heard it again. I thought at first it was in my head, that I was recalling it so vividly that it pierced into the reality, but no. He was replaying it, a recording of some kind, a recreation of her outcry. As Jackson plummeted out of view, I shut my eyes because I knew he would not allow me to plug my ears, and I thought I could convince myself it was merely a nightmare if I could not see, removing myself from a room full of Charlie's pain.
Hers is worse than his, obviously.
Charlie!
And suddenly Jackson's voice echoed throughout the office as well.
Charlie!
I recalled the shout from the Detweiler Bridge 3 days ago when he briefly thought that maybe she had overexerted herself, fell to the dynamite beneath it. Hearing them both at once.
No! Charlie!
Charlie and Jackson roaring in torment over the apparent demise of one another forced me to fling my hands to my head, interlocking my fingers behind my skull. He played them again, over and over. I still did not cover my ears, but began breathing heavily and rhythmically, trying to quell the uprising tide of fury in my gut as I remained powerless to escape this torture chamber.
See, but then I think hers is worse because it's Charlie. You expect that level of emotion from Jackson. He wears it on his sleeve every day for strangers to some extent, but Charlie is so unconcerned with others, so independent. I never considered that any other person could draw such a pained response from her.
No! Charlie!
One more time, their cries rang out.
No! Charlie!
Stop.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Cidney.
Please, Howie, please, I am begging you with every fiber of myself. I cannot hear either of these screams even one more time or I will. Please, do not play them again. Please tell me what it is that you wanted to discuss and just stop. I opened my eyes to gauge his reaction, a false, sympathetic grimace with just a twinge too much self-satisfaction.
It's bone-chilling, isn't it? A fork to the intestines, twirling them around like spaghetti and topping it off with your heart as a meatball. These screams disturb me as well, my friend, and I won't play them again. Rest assured.
Thank you. Sincere yet woefully misplaced gratitude.
As for what I want, would you like to instead hear a different sound clip, a different record of their responses? Would you perhaps like to hear the sound I have on file for a time they thought that you were dead?
I have never died. You could not possibly have such a...
I got fly.
Jackson's voice interrupted me, calm, composed, almost even relieved.
I got food.
Charlie said, level and easy, monotonous. Silence was all for which I begged the last minute. Now it stung me so thoroughly, I would rather hear them scream once more. That was... They were in the middle of a mission.
Well, Jackson was in the middle of a mission when he called out for Charlie.
No, not like this one. That was Flyfoon. We thought we were all going to die.
But they thought you were already dead when they had that perfectly polite exchange, divvying up the fight while you were below, splattered across the street.
That is not true. I was not dead.
Oh, none of these clips were in response to someone actually dying.
But they thought...
They thought you were dead too, Sid.
He left an empty moment, time for the poison to seep into my mind before he injected more.
You can make any excuse you want, but that's a fact. They thought that you were dead. Tell me, do you think it sounded like they cared?
I got fly.
I got food.
They had no way of knowing. They were focused on the mission and withholding hope that I was still alive. Their grief was on reserve until the fight was resolved. Howie, I do not hold it against them that they were not immediately struck with...
Charlie!
And again he played the screams simultaneously, Jackson and Charlie wailing for each other. It damned my rebuttal short, stimulated another lengthy pause. You promised me you would not replay that.
I don't know about you, but when I hear those shouts, those blood-curdling, heart-wrenching shouts, they couldn't reserve their grief for one another. Even in the throes of an apocalyptic battle, if one of them just apparently fell, the other would be incapacitated by heartbreak. You can hear it in their voices, true devotion. But you know what I hear in this.
I got fly.
I got food.
I hear 6 emotionless, undistracted, frigid words exchanged between soldiers whose fallen comrade was yet another casualty of war. I hear 2 people who progressed without a passing thought. They didn't even care. True apathy.
What is the meaning of this? I clenched my fists, summoned every bit of self-control I could muster, not savagely attacking Howard Prophit for daring to make such assertions. What are we doing here, Prophit? He frowned, not accustomed to hearing himself referred to by his last name.
Sid, have you ever heard the phrase the third wheel?
Of course I had. I was not an idiot, but I correctly surmised that he wanted to explain it, and the turmoil of my soul prevented me from doing any more than shaking my head slowly.
It refers to a person who is superfluous to a group, an unnecessary extra disposable component. A bike, you see, only has 2 wheels and only needs 2 to drive. A third wheel is simply Oshios.
Tricycles have 3. I stupidly mumbled.
And tricycles are for children, which incidentally is exactly the way they treat you. Case in point, did you know they were together? Were you in on the secret?
Yes, I said, then quickly recollected. Well, eventually, I actually walked in on them.
Today, right? I opened the door for you.
One mystery solved, though that hardly mattered now.
That was the first time you'd heard about it.
I nodded.
Why do you suppose that is, Cidney? They didn't think it was worth mentioning, didn't think you'd understand. Maybe they flat out didn't care if you knew about it or not.
They wanted to keep it from the press.
And they'd done a fine job of that as well.
He scoffed, brandishing an open palm at the magazine still on his desk, taking a sip of whiskey.
Do you think perhaps they didn't want you to realize you were the third wheel? I mean, even when they eventually told you, I'll bet they did it all so buddy-buddy, chummy-like, emotionally manipulating you into thinking they suffered any real anguish over not telling you. That's how they do everything when it comes to you. That's the pattern. They treat you like an infant for as long as they can belittle you, then hit you with the pathos, coerce your feelings until you succumb to that. It's cheap tactics, honestly.
What are we doing here, Howie? I tried not to sound distraught when I asked, but staring at Jackson and Charlie on the ground, considering that maybe they were just using false friendship to influence me, distract me from thinking I was the first disposable piece of their machinery. The very thought was more than I could bear. No, I could not let him get into my head so easily. Charlie and Jackson's affections were amongst the few and purest truths that I had. They simply were not for doubting.
Tell me you haven't felt it. The isolation, the loneliness, the way they're pushing you away as they draw closer to each other.
He was right. I had felt it, but for the last hour I was at ease with it. I had so briskly attributed it all to them keeping their secret from me. But how did them not telling me they were in love suddenly make anything any better? How did it not make it worse? No, it is not like that.
Look, I take no pleasure pointing this out to you, but let's cut to the thick of it, all right? The real important question, if it came down to the wire, Sid, if somebody asked Jackson whom he should kill, you or Charlie, you honestly think he'd hesitate to pick you? You think Charlie would hesitate to pick you to die over Jackson?
Good. But that is precisely how I would want it.
Now, don't be a martyr, Cidney. Don't be so proud and melodramatic. That's not you. That's not what I admire. Remember, you're sensible, pragmatic. You know that the nature of your job insists that your neck is always on the line. You need a partner that has your back. Number one, no questions. Not two partners who have each other's and leave you in the dust. Some sort of secondary considerations. Sure, being the third wheel can be noble in some theatrical, foolish sense, but you can't be a theatrical fool in this business. You need someone who comes when you call him. Someone you can rely on. I'm offering you the chance to stop being alone, Cidney.
A new partner?
In a sense, sure.
Who?
Me.
I gulped and again glanced at Charlie and Jackson, allowing all the conspiracies he had put into my head to simmer and stew, granting them more legitimacy than they deserved, but I could at least partially agree with much of what he had said so far. Even if I hated myself for doubting them, there were seeds of doubt planted there before. Prophit was only watering those seeds. Eventually he elaborated.
You're a smart guy. You know the best way to win a war is to pick the strongest side. And I think today, just now, I demonstrated that as of right now, you are not on the strongest side.
We are all on the same side. I tried to assure him, scarcely listening to my own words and even more scarcely believing them. You and me, Charlie and Jackson, we are allies.
Bullshit. Don't do that to me, Cidney. I respect you too much to treat you like a naive child. You at least owe me the courtesy of the same. You know there's a power struggle on the horizon. You know that these two can't just stay subservient to me forever when they're barely staying there now. I'm offering you a chance to jump ship before the lines in the sand have been drawn. The best you can finish with these two is third. Sid, I guarantee you second. It's a simple numbers game.
Howie, I assure you, after today, they will fall in line with your will. There is no need to prepare for a war. You have already asserted your dominance. No war will come. We are on your side, Howie. He sighed, paced back to his desk and sat down.
You don't believe that, but if you do, it's all because they're manipulating you, Cidney. They're toying with your emotions, making you think they care about you, but you need to see through it. You need to be smart. The second you stop being useful to them, they will discard you. Anyway, I've said my piece on the matter. Hopefully, for your sake, some of it sinks in. I always win, Sid. I will again, with or without you, and I'll try to give you as much time as I can to give me your decision, but eventually, I won't be able to extend you this offer. Eventually, it'll be too late.
He coolly reached back into his jacket and enabled Charlie's brain. She gasped and sputtered, flailing aimlessly, blinking and ticking like a psychopath. I fell to my knees, and once she regained the clarity to recognize me, she hurled herself around my neck, scrambling into my arms like a cat in the rain, every inch of her body shaking furiously, sobbing and panting and coughing. I reassured her, stroked her rapidly heaving back, gave her just a few wordless moments to recalibrate herself as she nearly strangled me, crying, and how we pressed onward with whatever paperwork he was doing when we came in, unflinching.
Cidney.
It is all right, my dear, it is all right.
Where's Jackson?
Howie did his best to make it look like he was trying to cover his arrogant smirk as he chuckled through his nose and shook his head. I carried both Charlie and Jackson back to my apartment. I wanted to be out of Howie's office as quickly as possible once he had granted me my leave. So I scooped up a still unconscious Jackson and slung him across my shoulder, while I carried a still frantic and panicky Charlie like a baby in my arms. She twitched and jittered, yelped, then swore, then sobbed, the entire elevator ride down, while Jackson swung lifelessly. It was telling of something, and I do not know what, that I was so willing to do this for both of them that my first response to the door in Prophit's office swinging open was to snatch them both off the floor and drag them through it. Perhaps such a powerful urge to protect them could not have arisen from an elaborate con. But then perhaps they had me snowed at a deeper level than I could even comprehend. Once we got back to my apartment, I rested Jackson on the couch and set Charlie into an armchair. She continued to tick, eyes darting, occasionally whimpering, though the spasticity of her temporary psychosis had already begun to settle down. I knelt in front of her, brushing my hands gently across her cheeks to relax her nerves and keep her focused. Is there anything I can get you, my dear? Water or food? Unfortunately, I only have chicken nuggets.
Super fucking tired, Cidney.
She sputtered, then began tensely sucking on a lock. Of course, I soothed. Charlie had described her last venture into the pit as lasting approximately 10 minutes, even though to us, she was out a matter of seconds. A quick estimate put her perception of 15 minutes bodiless somewhere on the order of weeks. I do not know if one sleeps when they are merely a brain in a jar, but I imagine if she does, it is not much and it is not sound. Go on to bed. We will still be here when you wake up, I promise.
But no, Sid, please, that. Not my bed. I can't, I don't. Not alone, okay?
And she cracked a weak smile, broken by a spurt of a sob. Oh, Charlie. I felt callous for even suggesting it. Yes, mine, obviously. Forgive me for being so thoughtless, and leave the door open. I will be right out here, tending to Jackson if you need anything. Anything in the entire world, do not hesitate. She nodded, and we both stood up. I reached out an arm to stabilize her, guide her toward my room, but she seemed back within herself enough to stay balanced. Before she walked away, she paused for just a second, then stood on her tiptoes, yanking my face down to hers and kissing me on the side of the cheek.
Thanks, bud.
Was it all only to manipulate me? Could it possibly be so vile when it felt so purely good? Once I knew she was as well as she could be, I called on medical to check up on Jackson. I had to construct some fabrication about him bumping his head during skirmishes, since telling the medic the real truth was out of the question. She administered a few quick tests, gave him a few miracle drugs to ensure against lingering neurological effects once he came to, and instructed me to let him rest peacefully. Eventually he would wake on his own, and sure enough, after I had 2 hours of quiet, private reflection over my position within the triumvirate, Jackson emitted a labored groan, saving me from my torment. I rushed to his side. Jackson, are you well? How do you feel? What can I bring you?
Maybe a new head.
He grumbled, opening one eyelid, then the other, blinking and squirming in the light.
A new brain actually would be nice. Obviously something's wrong with this one.
Your foolish bravery would be quite sensational were it not so detrimental. He smiled, rotating himself upright.
Blech. It's weird how passing out sucks worse than dying. Where am I? This is your place, right?
Yes, you have been out for a few hours. I think the impact with the glass did it.
Probably. I haven't been tossed around like that since, well, I guess never. Kind of scary being on that end of the telekinesis, not the one who's calling the shots.
It was scary for all of us, Jackson.
He awake?
I lifted my head briskly to find Charlie standing in the doorway of my bedroom, hugging her trench coat around her shoulders. By now she was only faintly shivering and looked surprisingly well rested considering her brief 2-hour nap. It seemed the exhaustion was fleeting. It was truly only 15 minutes of purgatory, no matter how it felt to her. He is. I stood up and moved aside, allowing her to group right next to him. Perhaps it was a bad idea considering the fragile state of his health to let Charlie this close. It was a sequence of events that would surely lead her to the worst mood. Howie's return, Jackson's apparent demise, and a week in the darkness was enough to burn out a long fuse, much less one as short as Charlie's. She would be understandably on edge, predictably violent, and Jackson winced as she bent down, snatched him by the collar of his shirt, and yanked his face up to hers.
When I tell you to shut the fuck up, you shut the fuck up. Understand?
Sorry, love.
And if you weren't just recovering from a fit of unconsciousness, I would punch you in the face so hard right now. This will have to work instead.
She pulled him up into a hug. I stood idly by, awkwardly shuffled my feet, tried to distract myself with something on my barren coffee table, tried not to recognize my alienation from them being so patently displayed yet again. Once they finally stopped, she flung herself into an armchair. Jackson returned to the couch, and I took a seat in the other chair across from Charlie. She spoke first.
So if I asked you what the hell was wrong with you, would you have a legitimate answer to that question?
Is there one?
He asked, grabbing his forehead and wincing.
No, but I would still like to understand why you were being so damn stupid.
It was stupid, I'll admit it. I just got overexcited because it was off. The containment method, however he keeps me from tearing him to pieces, it wasn't activated when we walked in. That's literally never happened. Not in years. Better yet, I don't think he realized it. When he went to touch me, I don't think he knew I could push him back.
But then what, it came back on?
Yeah, I guess. It seemed like he just forgot. Or better yet, maybe it's not even him that turns it on. He was definitely nervous for a little bit. Maybe waiting for someone else to do it or something.
You should have either killed him or done nothing then. Taunting him, slapping his hand away, pissing him off, that was basically the worst option you had.
I already admitted I wasn't thinking straight, didn't I?
He may have been enticing you also. After you were both incapacitated, he intimated to me that the final intention of the meeting was to isolate me. It is possible he was fishing for such a reaction to give him justification in dispatching you, simultaneously to assert the standing of his hold over you.
No, I don't. I mean, maybe. I know how he's all manipulative and whatever, but I don't think he saw it coming. He looked surprised when I pushed his hand off.
Right. Look surprised. Let's build a whole conspiracy theory off that. Get thrown out windows and everything. Dictate all of our future actions on your interpretations of Howie's facial expressions.
Charlie derided him.
Whatever, silver lining is, it's good to know that whatever he's using to contain me, sometimes it's not on. Maybe that means one day we can turn it off, for good, you know, and then find Charlie's brain, get filled with just the signal, make it unjammable or variable or something.
Hey, yeah, just find whatever is holding you, which we don't know, and turn it off, which we don't know how, then find my brain, which I haven't found in 5 years with 6 senses, tamper with the precariously constructed link between my mind and body, and we're home free. And what about Cidney, anyway?
Had he momentarily forgotten to keep up the facade of concern for my well-being?
I'm not saying it's a strategy to get out, but it's better than before when I thought he always had control over me no matter what. The point is, now we know both of us are contained by things outside of us, things we could maybe dismantle or disable or get rid of. And yeah, Sid's not so lucky, but eventually if we got your brain and my... whatever this is, the anti-telekinesis, both of us together could protect him. It's still hopeless, but it's less hopeless. Howie tipped his hand just slightly today. He doesn't do that very often.
And all we had to do in exchange was practically die. Nice trade, JT.
Her sarcasm refused to quit, and Jackson recognized it as a pointless battle, especially in her current justified mood. She exhaled audibly once. It was clear he had relented, then smiled toward me.
Thank God for Cidney. That's all I have to say about this mess.
Yeah, seriously, you saved our bacon, dude.
It was nothing, I assured them.
What did you talk about? You said he wanted to isolate you. What for?
On the spot, I elected to be upfront with them. Until proven guilty, they were still my friends, and I wanted to grant them the opportunity to defend themselves against Prophit's accusations. Howie's concerned that the future holds a power struggle between us and him.
Probably not wrong.
Charlie shrugged. He was aiming to get me to jump ship, to flip me to his side, should such a struggle arise. Charlie dismissively stifled her jeer, while Jackson merely smiled and shook his head. It was as if to them the notion of me switching sides was too outlandish to take seriously. I did not know if this was overwhelming trust in my commitment or overwhelming faith in the power of their hold on me. Prophit had rattled my securest core. I could not tell which way was up, and I could not continue living in such a world. I had to confront them about it directly, regardless of the ugliness it dragged out.
Ridiculous. How'd he set out to do that?
He told me that I was the third wheel, that you were using me for the situations in which I was useful, but would discard me the first opportunity you were forced to choose between each other and me. He offered me a chance to align myself with him instead.
Good. Glad that was all his weak-as-shit attempt at manipulation was. Obviously something else is occupying him these days, but I still expected better. Losing his touch, stupid prick.
He is not entirely wrong. They both whipped their heads up to look at me, and amongst the shock, they each had very different expressions. Jackson was sad, broken, hurt. Charlie was just intensely annoyed.
The fuck did you just say?
She asked in an icy, quiet tone. Come now, Charlie. Be honest and leave emotions out of it. Would you not choose Jackson over me, with the choice presented to you?
Wow. Fuck you, Cidney.
She scoffed, shaking her head and passing across the room to the windowsill, physically removing herself from an uncomfortable situation as was her tendency. It would be more productive with just Jackson anyway. Jackson?
Sid, I mean, you can't honestly have let him get inside your head just like that, did you? After everything we've been through?
Jackson unconfidently pleaded with me. I felt instantly guilty for doubting him, but then recalled something else Prophit had warned me of. I would not allow them to use my own affections to influence me. This discussion would focus on facts alone. I have fought Micah single thrice this year, and he is a worthy opponent that all 3 times I have narrowly wrangled into submission, yet each time that I requested assistance from you, you did not assist me.
I did.
Jackson bashfully reminded me.
Last week I helped you sedate him right over there, remember?
Remember when he saved your fucking life, not 10 minutes later?
Charlie grumbled under her breath, gazing out the window. I opted not to engage her. You did, yes, and I am grateful for your assistance, Jackson, but where were you the times before?
If you honestly haven't pieced it together yet, dumbass.
Charlie raised her voice for this comment, probably because I had ignored the previous one.
We were fucking.
Charlie, come on, relax, all right? It's Cidney.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot we were supposed to treat him like a fucking child whenever it's convenient for him.
It stung, rigging too closely to what Prophit had warned me of. Do not treat me like a child ever. I growled in a tone I never sought to use against my sister. And whatever evidence you may offer, you simply cannot deny the simple fact that—
Guys, please stop.
Jackson stood up between me and her, lifting a hand out at either of us to quell our rising tempers. He wobbled a bit in his stance, given his recent recovery from unconsciousness, but shook it off and pressed on.
This was his plan all along, you know? Throw a wrench in our works, get us riled up in infighting.
Yeah, I know that, and it never would have worked until Numbskull took the fucking bait.
I opened my mouth to protest, but Jackson, who sincerely seemed to wish to mediate the scuffle before it got out of hand, cut me off. I could speak significantly louder than he could, but I chose to let him speak.
Sid, what she means to say—
I'm fucking saying what I mean to say, Jackson. Please don't speak for me.
Fine.
He granted in his most emotionally stable voice.
Cidney, I should have been there to help you every time you fought Leper, especially when you specifically asked for help, and I'm sorry that we got distracted by— well, each other, I guess. That was my fuck up, and I'm so sorry, but the fact that you'd even consider the stuff Prophit was trying to tell you it's kind of insulting, you know? The idea that I'm the kind of person who would just keep someone around until the point that he stopped being useful and pretend to be your friend. The idea that I was intentionally not helping you with leper fights because I didn't care if you got hurt. You know us, but better than anyone. Does that sound like me or Charlie?
It did not. Listen, I am sorry if you were insulted. That was not my intention, but honestly, personal feelings aside, were the choice put to you, me or Charlie?
Sid, I'd kill the guy asking me to choose, then everyone who was watching and myself and the whole fucking universe before I made that decision. You have to understand, it's a flat out impossible question for me to answer. There isn't even an answer for it. You have to understand that. You have to believe me, right?
I do not think you—
Who would you pick, Cidney, me or Charlie?
And there was nothing I could say to that. He kept up his barrage of emotional body blows as I silently reeled.
I love you, Cidney.
I could not doubt it. My heart sank to the floor. I had requested that you please take emotion out of this conversation.
Yeah, sorry, I can't. It's an emotional issue. You inspire emotion in me. And if Prophit says that I think you're expendable, he's flat out wrong. I need you. Really need you, man. We both do. I don't care what Charlie says. You should have seen us before you showed up. We were at each other's throats. You balance us out. You make us, both of us, better people. You're the sweetest, gentlest, most earnest person I've ever met, loyal to the ends of the universe.
Current insinuations excluded on that loyalty thing.
Can you not?
Oh shit, my bad. Did I interrupt you jacking off his ego?
Sometimes people need to hear this kind of thing, Charlie.
The way he said it was rife with subtext, deeply personal. I did not intend to allow them to start fighting amongst themselves, not on account of me and my stupid insecurities, which I was realizing I never should have expressed anyway. I want to believe you, Jackson. In my heart, I know it is true, but how do I know that you are not... Prophit said that you both manipulate me emotionally.
Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't with... That's what love is, you idiot!
She jumped off the sill and yelled it loud enough to echo off the walls of my apartment.
Emotional manipulation, if you're feeling that, it's because we love you and you're too thick to recognize it. You think you don't manipulate me emotionally every fucking day, Cidney? You think there's not shit I only do because of you? Honestly, he gets you for 5 fucking
Jackson
minutes.
has a leg to stand on with his assertions, Charlie. Your angry proclamations are inspiring to some extent, but flimsy.
What the fuck are you talking about?
My feelings of justification had about run dry, so grasping at the lingering straws, I latched onto the most poignant thing from my discussion with Prophit, the screams. And I said something that I never should have even thought. The day of the Flyfoon fight, you left me, Charlie. You left me to die. The choice was right in front of you, Jackson or me, and you chose him. How could you tell me this choice is impossible for you to make when... you have already once before made it? For all the hurt in Jackson's initial reaction to my uncertainty, Charlie trumped him tenfold. The broken anguish was sincere enough that I almost backed down immediately, apologized forthright, but it only stayed for a fleeting moment before the rage flooded back in.
Charlie, love, don't.
Fuck you.
She spat, drilling the air before her with her finger as she lurched toward me.
Fuck you all the way back to the shithole Polish petri dish you slithered out of, you ugly mutant son of a cocksucker. How fucking dare you?
Charlie, please relax.
I chose Jackson, you insufferable dipshit, because Jackson had a chance of knocking Fly out of the sky before Foon killed both of you. What were you gonna do if I pulled you out? Jump at him? You think you would have held pat for 20 seconds with a 7-foot-tall purple man came hurtling at his face? Furthermore, I thought I could maybe potentially group Jackson if I had to group somebody. Your body is a hell of a lot different from mine, all right? I was terrified of grouping either of you, but I thought I had a better shot with Jackson and he had a better shot with Fly.
So that is your excuse. It was a tactical decision.
You're damn right that's my excuse. My horrible excuse for leaving you there. It was a tactical fucking decision. Who I pulled out of a tube. Strictly business, you goddamn asshole. And it fucking killed me to make it based just on that. If you recall, I threatened to kill Howie if he didn't fail-safe you back.
That is a fair point.
Shit, how long have you been holding on to that one, Cidney? How could you even say something like that I don't...
Charlie, I was not.
I think about what I did to you every single day of my life, Cidney. Not a day goes by where I don't think about leaving you there, holding up that truck, and every time I do, I want to find my brain just so I can dump it into a blender. It stings so bad. We were saving the world, you fucking dick. I didn't have any choice. How dare you fucking throw that in my face? How dare you even think that I don't love you?
After that, there was nothing left to disbelieve. She was openly crying, and my chest felt as though I had swallowed the sun, plus all of the stars. She angrily panted at me in the otherwise silent room for what felt like forever, before I finally willed myself to stand up and hurl my arms around her. I thought that maybe when I did, she would group away from my embrace and I would find myself swinging through nothing but air, that rejection would be a punishment I very rightly deserved. Charlie lingered, Perhaps only for the sake of my own wretched soul. Perhaps I had manipulated her emotionally into staying. That was appropriate. Because she loved me, I could not doubt it ever again. For the life of me, my dear, I am the greatest fool there is. I choked as I stroked her locks between my fingers.
Goddamn right.
I am sincerely sorry. To both of you, it was a moment's lapse in devotion, and I will never doubt you. Never allow a wretch like Prophet to get between us again. I promise this. There is no room for him anyhow.
Thank you for listening to the Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. Email me at beamchronicles@gmail.com for any reason, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. 5-star ratings on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're hearing this would be great, and tell your friends to listen to the show. I actually do have a few new things to say in this section. Special shout out to the Beam Chronicles #1 fan, Mr. Tatui, first name Rat. Congrats to Mr. and Mrs. Garden on their nuptials, Oliver and Olivia. Good luck to you crazy kids. And finally, Randy, thanks for being the absolute greatest daughter I could ever ask for. I love you, Turnip, across all the universes. Don't you dare think that I don't. All music and sound effects sourced from the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for the show, and thank you one more time for listening.